Sarah started watching Alfie much more closely after that. A mother's guilt weighing heavy on her shoulders. She'd go running to him at any and every sound he made. I'd find her hovering above his crib, sometimes late into the night, watching him sleep. I noticed Alfie crying a lot more than he used to. He was never quiet by any means, but now it was almost constant. Sarah explained it to be hunger, but I swear some days she was feeding him every half hour. One day when I'd managed to convince Sarah to get some rest, I sat with Alfie in my arms, rocking him slowly, listening to his breathing. It was much deeper than before, much more strained, like the air scratched the inside of his throat on each exhale. I watched his chest move up and down with each labored breath, wondering just how a baby could eat so much yet still look so skinny. The first visit to the doctor came when I walked into the baby's room to find Sarah propped up against the crib, half unconscious with blood leaking from her nipples. The mental image of Alfie laying asleep with crimson-stained lips still makes me shiver. The doctor couldn't find anything wrong with Alfie, giving us a few half-arsed guesses such as colic, and suggested we start using bottles if the feeding is too hard on Sarah's breasts. An air of judgment dripped from his words like venom. Sarah burst into tears on the drive home. We started feeding Alfie through bottles, something he took to without any difficulty, which I thanked God for. Things seemed to get a little easier for a while, though we ended up needing to buy formula alongside the breast milk because he was eating it all. I did the maths once. Alfie was eating sometimes over 10 times what a baby was meant to eat. We were spending hundreds of pounds on anything the little man would let down his throat, but he never seemed to gain weight, his skin still taut on the ridges of his ribs. After returning home with bags filled mostly with baby formula, completely forgetting at this point to get anything for me and Sarah to eat, I found Sarah sat in the middle of the living room, holding Alfie to her chest and crying. "I think he's sick," she managed out between sobs. Alfie's skin had turned a jaundice yellow and felt rubbery and slick. When I finally managed to pry his eyes open, I found the same for them. The scara now a murky bloodshot brown. We took him back to the hospital where we sat unable to even breathe as the doctors ran test after test after test after test, enduring side eyes and whispered expressions of disgust. But they again didn't find anything. Nothing that could cause any of the symptoms Alfie displayed. Even after monitoring him over several nights, the useless bastards couldn't find anything. Eventually we just had to take him home. What the hell else were we supposed to do? Spend our entire lives in the hospital? Other than the yellow skin and eating habits, there didn't seem to be anything else wrong. He wasn't in pain. He looked malnourished, but I could tell just by the void in my pocket that he was far from it. I just felt so fucking useless. Time was blending together at this point, whether due to the lack of sleep or the identical days. So, I'm not exactly sure how many weeks it had been since me and my wife had slept in the same bed. But I think Alfie was about 4 months old. We were on a schedule of shifts. One of us would sit with Alfie, feeding him over and over while the other person stole a few hours of darkness. One time I had run out of bottles but didn't want to wake Sarah. She was coming apart at the seams. We both were. It was agony to see her like that. This woman I thought could take on the whole world, now with frazzled unkempt hair, sagging skin, permanently rheumy eyes. We hadn't even washed our clothes in weeks. I don't think she had a single shirt that didn't have bloodstains on the chest. I wanted Sarah to have at least one full night's sleep. So, I let Alfie suckle on the tip of my finger, hoping that it'd delay the mind-breaking wailing by just a few more minutes. And it worked. The silence was so blissful I began to nod off myself. But just as my eyelids made my vision flicker, a sharp pain shot through my hand and woke me right back up. I yelped, yanking my hand from Alfie's mouth, almost throwing him off me on instinct. Immediately he began screaming, the sound cutting into my eardrums with a similar pain to what I'd just felt in my hand. But I was unbothered, my attention absorbed entirely by the bead of blood trickling down from the tip of my index finger. Sarah and I had basically stopped speaking to each other, unless it was about Alfie. No more giggle-filled conversations about the most ridiculous things. No more romantic dinners and inside jokes. No more intimacy, emotional or physical. No more love. Just 2 zombies funneling milk into a screaming infant. Like insects whose sole reason for existence was to feed their queen. I stopped on the doorstep after a shopping trip once, my forehead pressing against the door as I listened to Alfie's scream pierce through the walls like bullets from a machine gun. I could hear it throughout the entire street as I walked. I'd heard comments and complaints from just about every person who lived anywhere near us. I'm ashamed of it, but I thought about turning around, walking back to the shop, or to a pub, anywhere. I just wanted to not hear it for a while. It was strange. It had been just 5 months. Almost nothing in the grand scheme of things. Yet it felt like looking after Alfie was all I'd ever done. I could barely remember life before. I struggled to recall the names of friends I'd celebrated with when he was born. I knew going into it that having a kid was supposed to change your life. But I had been utterly consumed by it. I tried to smother those disgusting thoughts, but they didn't relent until I heard Sarah inside. Like and subscribe.